Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno episode 217, and that's show where I review all the comics I read this week in one show. So let's get started. We go worst pick of the week to best pick of the week and everything in between. Number 18, so it's kind of an average pull list this week. So number 18, people might disagree, but I really didn't like this book, and that is Detective Comics issue 969. I'm going to talk a lot about Stephanie because she actually is a big part of this book, or I wouldn't have put it this low if she wasn't, but her relationship with Tim was the meat of this book, and I just don't love the way this book represents Stephanie Brown. Now, if you don't know, Stephanie Brown is one of my favorite superheroes of all time, and she's just a pawn here, and it continues with this, and especially with the switch of a button moment where Stephanie is talking to Anarchy, saying, "Oh, I don't know what I want to do, please someone tell me." She's in her cave of some sort, talking to her dead father's costume, saying, "Yeah, you know, maybe I should have been like my dad," which is the complete opposite of who Stephanie is. The reason she became spoiler was to spoil her father's plans, and no matter what ever happened, she never said, "I should have been like daddy." You know, that's the complete opposite of Stephanie's character. But then, the switch of the button moment is when she sees Tim, she kisses Tim, is like, "Yes, I'll be a superhero, yeah, Tim's back!" And it just was too much of a switch of button. Now, I understand they love each other, they care for each other, and I love their relationship, but to have Stephanie's motives change so quickly just because of Tim, it just feels like she doesn't have a mind of her own, and that's not Stephanie. That's a complete opposite of Stephanie. And that continues as the series, as this issue goes on, where Kate's talking to Tim, saying, "Oh, you know, you should tell your partner the truth, that you want to still do this," and it looks like he's actually trying to follow in the footsteps of his future self, but also not trying to. So is Stephanie gonna get angry at Tim? It's like, is this gonna be a cycle? Or maybe this could be a trend of her thinking on her own. But, yeah, and that's actually most of the issue, and that's why it is low on my list. This is the whole story of the issue, and it's just so out of character for Stephanie. It's mistreatment of the character, and honestly just did not like the story. So for me, Detective Comics issue 969 gets 1.5 stars, or even awkward art moments. Like, I honestly had a laugh at this weird smile of Stephanie's when she sees Tim. Now again, I understand excitement, but that was a little over the top, that one. But yes, I gave that 1.5 stars. Now moving on to number 17, which is Rugrats issue 2. I did give it an honest try. I tried out the first issue, wanted to try out the second to see if it would be a little different, but it wasn't. Still obviously the same chibi style artwork, and not as similar as the TV show as I want. And then also I feel like the personalities of the characters are still not shining here, and I think the real reason is I don't know if Rugrats is a franchise that should have been turned into a comic, because right now it's just not capturing, weirdly enough, that magic that the show had. So I'm going to give that one 2 stars, and that's number 17. Moving on to number 16, which is Invincible Iron Man issue 594, and with this issue, it's just kind of going through the motions. We don't really get any more information on our Iron Man. We get Infamous Iron Man / Dr. Doom doing his own little side project, and I guess if you've read Infamous Iron Man, you'll enjoy those scenes a bit more. I stopped reading that probably midway, and then the rest is the girls of, you know, the supporting characters, just, you know, the women supporting characters of Iron Man, Mary Jane, his mother, and Riri, fighting board members of his company. So that was strange to have as a plot. So the Invincible Iron Man issue 594 for me gets 2 stars. Was not so impressed with the storyline. Alright, moving on to number 15, which is Glitterbomb, The Fame Game, issue 3. And I do still like the premise of this kind of monster in Hollywood, but I think it's a little bit too mysterious. We don't know enough of it. And also, the characters aren't as likable in this volume as the first volume. And I don't say likable as like, oh, everyone has to be nice in this. No, I mean, you could have a villain that's likable, you know, and this character is just, there's nothing to find that you want to root and follow for her, either as a villain or a hero or anti-hero, you know, or just protagonist. So that's kind of why this one's a bit low. I do want to finish off the miniseries, and that's why I've been sticking around with it, but I've been a bit disappointed with this volume. So I gave that 2.5 stars. Moving on to number 14, which is Nightwing The New Order issue 4. I feel like it's a little bit too long of a mini-series. I mean, it's cool to see Nightwing interacting with the new Titans. I liked Lois Lane as a Blue Lantern. I thought that was cool. But the emotions in this book aren't as strong as they were in the beginning. It feels like it's going through the motions with this storyline. And also the artwork is not very strong, and I don't really love the character design, especially like for Starfire and the rest of the team. And maybe that goes into like the bulkier, dark artwork with this book. But yeah, Nightwing New Order issue 4 gets 2.5 stars. And that was number 14. Now moving on to number 13, I actually liked the story for this, but the artwork was what got me, and that was X-Men Gold issue 16. Still not a big fan of this coloring, but also just the artwork. It was really hard to kind of see any expressions in their faces. It was just very bulky. I just didn't really love the art style here. I just felt like it could have been a little bit more detailed and more, had more expression in this book. Now, moving into the story, though, love the Kitty and Colossus moments. I'm glad that they're getting back together, and there's some really cool moments there and some funny moments with Kitty and the X-Men team. And even the whole them going to space thing, which is a little generic, but is still good. I still want to see how does the rest of the team try to go save the other half of the team and what this has to do with the negative zone. But, yeah, it was an okay issue. There's some good character moments, but the artwork really does bring it down for me. So X-Men Gold issue 16 gets 3 stars. Moving on to number 12, which is a little lower than the last issue because I did like the last issue a lot more, and that is Wonder Woman issue 35. Now this is pretty much an exposition issue of who's Jason, what's he been up to, so who's Wonder Woman's brother, and they don't even end the story here, so you're gonna get another exposition issue next issue, and I'm just like, I don't need that. So I guess if you really want to know more about Jason, this is the issue to pick up. I don't know if it's really necessary to tell a whole issue about, and maybe 2 issues about Jason's origins. So Wonder Woman issue 35 gets 3 stars. Moving on to number 11, which I actually really liked the story, but also artwork kind of brought this one down, and that is the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 21. The artwork was way too, the inking was way too heavy here, and also just felt really bulky. The art, really not a lot of expressions here from the characters, so I just felt like the artwork could have been better here. Coloring's okay for the book, but the art and again, the pencils could have been stronger. But the actual story was interesting, as seeing Grace and the Power Rangers interacting, and Grace obviously being very obsessed with the Power Rangers, where she has her own Zord. I think she calls it a Mechazord, which was interesting. So I think Power Rangers, they're going through the motions with this issue, but they're starting to catch up. It's like, oh, maybe Grace is not, exactly what she seems. Yeah, so, and also Zordon comes back in the end, so if you missed Zordon, he's back. But the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 21 gets 3 stars. Now, moving on to number 10, which is Imaginary Fiends issue 1. Glad I like this Tim Seeley book better than the one that came out last week from Aftershock, which actually was my worst pick of the week last week. My Imaginary Fiends is a bit more up his alley. It's horror, it's mystery, and it's about these kind of imaginary friend type characters following certain people, people with mental illness or children, and they tell them what to do pretty much. And now we get to see our main character. She ends up becoming, this liaison? I'm not even pronouncing that right. Anyway, she's working for the FBI, and she's working within this Imaginary Fiends section of the FBI by the end of the issue. So hopefully we'll dig deeper into who these characters are and, why these monsters are doing this. So I thought it was fun. Definitely gave me enough for issue 2. Definitely wanted a little bit more personality with some of these main characters, though, to really hook me, but I did feel like it was an interesting beginning. So Imaginary Fiends issue 1 gets 3.5 stars. Moving on to number Number 9, which is Copperhead, issue 16, which I really like the origins of our main character, Clara, finding out, you know, exactly how she got her child, who we found as not actually her child, but her sister's child, and how, you know, her son's, you know, her son's father, how they're connected, so we learn a little bit more about him. So, and also we have other characters trying to look for Clara, but it was cool. I liked this rehash and just learning more about this world, and it definitely feels more Western space storyline than we've gotten in previous issues. So, Copperhead issue 16 gets 3.5 stars. Now moving on to number 8, I believe we're up to, which is Action Comics. Issue 992. So, this was a pretty good aftermath issue for Action Comics, where we get to see Superman, you know, fighting the aspect that his father is evil, and he says, no, I don't believe that, I need to find him, I need to know the truth, and then he ends up traveling back in time to go back to Krypton, and then we see Booster Gold saying, no, Clark, don't do it, so we'll see exactly what ends up going wrong, but there's some good moments, especially between Lois and Clark here. We get a good moment between Batman and Clark. It's definitely a point A to point B type issue, but if you enjoy the Oz Effect, I thought this was a pretty solid aftermath issue for that story arc. So, Action Comics issue 992 gets number 8, and I gave that 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 7, which is the Amazing Spider-Man Renew Vows issue 13, which was a pretty solid issue. There's definitely some cliches spread out through this book, especially with Annie, who was the character I was a little hesitant on, where they definitely play on a lot of teenage tropes here, where I didn't feel like Annie had much of her personality here besides the teenage rebellion tropes, but the family fun aspect of this issue made it, and that's why it's, you know, a lot higher up, and I did like kind of the cartoonier artwork style here. But if this continues, I don't know how high up this book will be if it continues to go on with cliches. But the Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows issue 13 gets 4 stars. I did like this issue as a beginning, but hopefully we get some more twists and turns as the series goes on. So moving on to number 6, which is Snotgirl issue, what are we up to? Issue 8. And this is all about the boys. So if you were wondering what they were up to and who these characters are and what they're obsessed with, you find out. And especially with Snotgirl's ex-boyfriend, where you can definitely see he's still obsessed with her. And he's definitely a likable character, though. He's the point of view character here, and he's definitely likable, especially compared to the other guys in this book. But we'll see how his connection with Snotty ends up going. So, Snotgirl issue 8 gets a solid 4 stars. It was nice seeing a different point of view from this comic book. Now, moving on to number 5, which is the and I got a little bent. All New Wolverine issue 27. So, this was another great addition to All New Wolverine. Still artwork, especially the mouths look kind of weird in this book, but I do think the actual action in that aspect of the issue is solid. It's just kind of the mouths and some of the facial expressions that could be a little better. But I did love the story. It's Dakin, he ends up finding out that Sarah is kind of the mole character, that the Orphan X have been controlling her, and that's the reason why they knew what Laura was up to. So now it's the whole family kind of going after Orphan X, but it's a very intense issue, especially as they get the sword to try to kill Wolverine. Orphan X gets the sword and finds the sword. So very solid issue. We'll see what ends up happening with Laura, especially after everything that's happened with her mother. But I'm very interested to learn more about Orphan X. They've definitely become a real threat. Taylor has built that up. So All New Wolverine issue 27 gets a solid 4 stars, and that is number 5. Moving on to number 4, this is just a really fun book. And that is Betty and Veronica Vixens, issue 1. If you're looking for, you know, kind of a Grease-style book, except more badass, you get Betty and Veronica Vixens. It's, Betty and Veronica find out there's all these motorcycle gangs, and you even have reference to that gang in Riverdale, the Serpents, whatever they're called. forget their names. People are gonna kill me for this. It's the something serpents. Anyway, so you got that motorcycle gang, and then you have Reggie and Archie part of a gang, and Veronica and Betty are semi-interested. They kind of learn more about the world, and then you can see that Archie and Reggie don't really want Betty and Veronica in their world, so they create their own, and especially Betty, you know, she's kind of goody two-shoes until she reveals to Veronica, hey, I've been working on this motorcycle for 2 years, and I really want to use it. Let's build our own gang. So it's a really cool, you know, setup issue of where the series is going to go. Artwork is a bit simplistic, but it also kind of works for, you know, this contrast of this kind of more edgier Betty and Veronica. And it's nice to actually have a Betty and Veronica book, and they're in a motorcycle gang. So, very solid issue. I had a lot of fun with it. I think it's an interesting world. So, Betty and Veronica, Vixens issue 1 definitely gets me enough to want to read the next issue, and I gave that a solid 4 stars. Now, moving on to number 3. I think people are going to be surprised by this, but these 3 books I really enjoyed, and it was hard to pick the order, but this is the order I ended up picking. And number 3 is Doomsday Clock, issue 1. And I thought this was a very good issue. I love Watchmen. Gary Frank's artwork is so good. I actually did 2 reviews for this on my channel, so if you want more in-depth review, I did an advanced review with no spoilers, and then I did my in-depth review, so definitely check that out for more information. But my quick recap of what I thought. I mean, I love the narration of Rorschach, this new Rorschach we find out. It definitely brings you into the vein of Watchmen again, but I also like that Jeff Johns is kind of doing his own thing. Yes, it is Watchmen, but it doesn't feel like it's rehashing everything Watchmen did. It actually is telling a new story. You have new characters, which was kind of cool. They're like the wild card characters. You definitely don't know what they're going to be up to, the husband and the wife, and exactly who their son is. And then you get the Superman connection in the end. You know, how is this going to connect to the DC Universe? So, it's everything you want from Watchmen book. Now, the reason is, number 3, though, it is setup. You know, I do believe that more issues to come are going to be even better. So, yes, this is a setup issue, but it was a very good setup issue. So, Doomsday Clock, issue 1 gets 4.5 stars. Now, moving on to number 2, which is Batgirl issue 17. I was surprised this was so high. I really enjoyed this issue. I'm obviously a huge Barbara Gordon fan. I love the relationship between Dick and Barbara, and it really shines here. It's not even about the Red Queen, who's our villain. It's just how Dick and Barbara work with each other, and how it highlights not even just their romance with each other, it definitely highlights that, but it's more about their friendship here, and how much they know each other. And especially the moment where Barbara's able to get Nightwing out of his mind control and uses her chip that makes her walk. And there's this fight scene where she can't walk, and it's Dick Grayson and Stephanie like becoming one in a way to fight off Red Queen, and them just totally trusting each other to do so. And I even like those moments like in the end where she's like, where Dick is like trying to put her foot back into place because she hit the Red Queen so hard that her foot's out of place. It's just like, it shows how connected they are physically and emotionally, and I love that. It was so well done here, and I just love their partnership, and it really highlights their relationship very well. So, Batgirl issue 17 would have been higher if the artwork wasn't as lanky, but the story was so good, and especially if you're a Barbara Gordon fan and a Dick Grayson fan. So, definitely pick this one up. I gave that 4.5 stars, and that's number 2. Moving on to number 1, which was Motor Girl issue 10. It is the last issue, and what a trip. It really showed how psychological this book was when we found out that this was all in Sam's mind, which I definitely figured, but I didn't know which place it was at. And we find out it's from issue 1. You know, this is all in her head about the aliens, and it was all just symbolism of what she was going through as a veteran and coming back home, and all the psychological aspects of what she dealt with, all the trauma she dealt with when she was away and when she was a prisoner of war. So, really well done issue, so emotional, again, very psychological, really well done book, and I couldn't ask for a better ending. So, Motor Girl issue 10 gets 4.5 stars, really enjoyed this one, and that is number 1. So, those are all my picks from worst pick of the week to best pick of the week. So let me know in the comments below what were your worst pick of the weeks, what was your best pick of the week, and everything in between. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Comic Frontline. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. Don't forget to like my Facebook page. Also in the description below there are links for my comic book Like Father Like Daughter. And don't forget to like the Facebook page of Like Father Like Daughter. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.